I'm calling to order this meeting of the Health, Environment, and Community Engagement Committee. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Cam Gordon, Chair of the committee, and today I'm joined by Council Members Fry, Andrew Johnson, Lisa Bender, Elizabeth Glidden, and Alondra Khan. We have a somewhat full agenda with 10 items on our agenda. We have 3 public hearings and 1 discussion item. I think before we move into our public hearings, I will go through our consent agenda so that if there's staff or others here who are interested in those items, we can cover those first. The first consent item, which is number 4 on our agenda, is authorizing extension of the current 3-year terms of contracts with various organizations through December 31st, and contracting an additional $300,000, and this is to continue providing audit services and financial management and filing support for neighborhood organizations in the neighborhood. The second consent item, number 5 on our agenda, is to set the public hearing for March 21st on the subject matter of an ordinance amending Title 11, adding a new article regulating the use of carry-out bags in retail establishments. Item 6 is also setting a public hearing. That's for February 22nd on the subject matter of an ordinance amending Title 11. Again, and this is removing from the list of prohibited drugs marijuana. Item 7 is also setting a public hearing. This is for March 21st, and this is on a subject matter amending our Title 11, adding a new chapter 236, emergency shelters, adding provisions providing for the licensure and regulations of emergency shelters. Item number 8 is after-hours work permits ordinance, and I'm going to move that we refer this to staff. It says on the printed agenda we were going to set the public hearing for February 22nd, but I understand that there's a couple council members who want some time to work on some details about this, and have been asked to just refer it to staff for now and bring it back when it's ready. This is an ordinance amending Title 3, Chapter 59, relating to after-hours work permits. The final item on our consent agenda is item 9, and that's setting a hearing for February 22nd on the subject matter of ordinances relating to air pollution and environmental protection. There's a number of chapters there that are listed, and 3 different titles, Title 3, Title 5, and Title 13. Are there any questions or about those, or anything any committee members would like to pull out for discussion? Seeing none, then I will call for a vote on the consent agenda. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Any abstentions? Those motions carry. Then we'll move up to our 3 public hearings. The first is on the energy data ordinance, and we will get I believe, a brief staff report on this from Ms. Khan. This is an ordinance changing the rules to Section 3 of Chapter 47.19, authorizing some amendments relating to air pollution and environmental protection. Welcome.
Thank you. Chair Gordon, council members. So the first presentation today is about the energy benchmarking policy amendment. I'm Nadia Khan with the city's health department. I'm an environmental analyst there. So the content of my presentation today is we will talk about the background of energy benchmarking, the importance of data quality, the evolution of private building data for the 2013, 14, and 15, the public disclosure date, and the actions that we are proposing today. So what is energy benchmarking? So the 5 basic W questions are: who is doing the benchmarking thing? All the commercial building in the city with an area of 50,000 square feet and over, they're reporting their energy consumption to the city. And also, all the public buildings in the city are eligible for this program. So what are they doing? The building managers or the building owners are reporting their annual energy and water consumption data to the city. Where they're doing it, they're using the EPA's Energy Star Portfolio Manager application. When are they doing it? They're doing it every year. June 1st is the due deadline for submitting their energy data to us. And why is the final question. So why is the building owner are responsible for making their building energy efficient? It also helps the city to meet the progress towards the climate action plan and to reduce the overall greenhouse gas emission and everything to help the environment. As we progress towards the program, we realize the importance of the data quality. So why are we focusing on the data quality? Garbage in yields garbage out. So we must collect useful data. Useful data will give the building owners to improve their building efficiency. Also, it will give us the freedom to measure our effectiveness of the program's effectiveness for the city. And last but not the least, city is committed to make some climate action plan, and the city's goal or target is to reduce greenhouse gas emission 15% by 2015 and 30% by 2025. So collecting meaningful data is extremely important for this program. The evaluation of data quality, 2013 data. For collecting the 2013 data, our response was only to have people on board and response to the data request that we are doing. So any submission of any kind of data, and if they are eligible for exemption, was successful or tolerated. With that focus in mind, we have an 87% response for 2013 data, and 75% of the data was analyzable. But then that was the first year for the data that we collected, and these are the data quality issues we faced. There were extremely high UI, or the energy use intensity. Some of the building owners, they picked the wrong energy unit. Some of the buildings are missing a full calendar year data. There were area discrepancy between what we have as in the assessor's office and what the building owners or the managers are actually reporting in the tool. And with all that in mind, Portfolio Manager, the application they're using for reporting the data, it does not detect all these data quality issues. So we reached out to EPA, and we landed on the second year of collecting the data. EPA took our suggestion, and they improved in the application to focus on the data quality. Also, we did a nationwide search, and I want to mention our partner in this program, CEE, or Center for Energy and Environment, and my colleague here she is present here, Katie Schmidt. She developed a tool, a data checker tool, to be in place in our department to check the quality of the data that we received. So we put some compliance threshold, and all the submissions should be analyzed through this data checker. With that 2014 data result, we found we have a 100% response rate, and 90% data was analyzable. Now let's talk about the 2015 data. Our focus is to enforce on the data quality. We want a 100% response rate with 100% analyzable data. Now the proposal has a two portion of it. Now I'm going to talk about the public disclosure data of it. As the data checker, we also looked at the other benchmarking cities nationwide. And none of the cities in the nation has a clear set date for the public disclosure portion of it. So in Minneapolis, we have the public disclosure date by the ordinance, it should be August 31st. But our experience from the last 2 years put us in a very difficult position for analyzing the complete set of data, then make it available for the public to have a report or to just look at it. So with all that in mind, these are the compliance standards that we are focusing this year. These are the thresholds, these are the properties that any submission, any data submission, we will look into these key items in their submission. Also, staff is proposing that we have a flexible date, a date that will help us to analyze the full set of data and then make it publicly available. So I just want to clarify the existing authority. The health department already has authority to determine the compliance. The change we are proposing will only clarify the standard at which we will enforce this year. Thank you. And any question, concern, comments? Thank you.
Any questions? Thank you very much. Councilmember Frye, did you have a question?
Yeah, I'm
Sorry, I stand corrected. There's a question now.
thank you. Excellent presentation. And as we've seen, not just in the United States, but throughout the world, when energy usage is ultimately disclosed, there's a much higher incentive to improve that efficiency itself. So I really appreciate the efforts. I guess I have two questions. One, what is, once we, the city, retrieve some of the data, and the data, too, is analyzable, or is able to be analyzed, what is our public disclosure procedure from there? Where would I be able to access this data? So that's the first question, and then, well, I'll wait for the answer.
Okay. So the standards I showed you. So we will disclose their energy data to the property information page that the city has, and we will. These are the key fields that we will disclose there.
Okay.
So under any property you pick under the property information, you will see their Energy Star score. You will see their property floor area that they reported. You will see what type of property it is, a commercial office building or something, or retail. You will see their site UI, which is the energy use intensity. And you will also see their total greenhouse gas emission, GHG emission, and the water data, the annual water data.
So this leads me right into my second question. And so we have the property floor area.
Yes.
Do we run the analysis or the mathematical formula for them to determine their energy usage based on, say, square foot?
So we started the cover building list or the eligible building list based on the assessor's data. So we collect the assessor's data from their web application, and that's how we determine these are the eligible building list for this year, which is just looking at the assessor's area, how they do it. So doing that, we run into difficulties because this is the data that the building managers are reporting based on their energy usage, the meter data.
Say that one more time. That last sentence, I just didn't quite hear you.
Okay, so we initially provide the area to the building managers or the building owners that 50,000 is your building area. So report the energy data. You're eligible for this ordinance and report the data to us. When we receive their data, we run through the data checker to the analyzer, and we found, okay, they actually reported 30,000. They said, oh, our building is 30,000, not 50,000. And the reason is that their reasoning is they're not looking at the tax area purpose. They're looking at the metered area because they're picking the area based on the covered meter, based on that electricity meter or the heating meter or the water meter. So that's why we run into those issues.
Yeah, so those are part of the problems, but I think to get to more what you're asking about is that Energy Star Portfolio Manager runs the calculations for us. So we just get the end result from that and then we decide whether or not that makes sense for that type of building. Because, for example, we don't think that a parking garage should be using 100 kBtu per square foot per year because that's not realistic. So something is wrong with their data.
Yeah, I guess I'm looking at strategies to enable comparison between buildings like IDS and their per square foot, or however you want to do the calculation formula, to that of like a city hall, which is dramatically smaller.
The portfolio manager does that already.
Okay.
Yes.
That's helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, that software already does.
There might be some more questions. Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I just wanted to say thanks for the presentation. I think it's so helpful to have this data available, and to Councilmember Frye's point, to be able to compare between different buildings and look for opportunities. I would just also throw in comment-wise, I would hope that this is available as well on the open data portal, and that it's easy to download the whole data set so that people can take this data, do their own analysis, and be able to identify outliers and trends.
Exactly.
Like
It's
that.
that's all the, that's why it's public data. And we do publish those data in city's sustainability webpage.
Great, thank you.
They're available. Thank you.
Because this is an ordinance amendment, and actually what we're doing is we're adding about one sentence to the ordinance, if you'll notice that. We have to have a public hearing in order to do that. So I'm going to ask if there's anybody here who wants to speak on this issue before the committee. It's public hearing, and with that, we can consider the hearing opened. And I'm assuming nobody has signed in. Seeing nobody stepping forward, then I think I will close the public hearing. And Councilmember Glidden, would you like to make a comment or motion?
Thanks. I'll go ahead and move approval of this change. It's really in context a small technical change that allows our staff to continue doing a great job and enhance their ability to set standards that are understandable by all. And I just want to say thank you to Al Swintek, who's here from Centerpoint. I'm not sure if anybody else is here that's from the building community or from Excel Energy, but we've had great partnerships and just amazing compliance rates, I think in part due to a lot of really amazing work by our staff. So thank you very much for the presentation and for helping us understand what updates will be helpful to the ordinance and its continued effectiveness. So with that, I've moved this item.
Okay, so we have a motion in front of us. Any comments or questions? Seeing none then, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Any abstentions? All right, the motion carries. Thank you so much. Now we have our second public hearing and ordinance amendment before us. This has to do with dry cleaning regulation ordinance, and Mr. Hanlon will come up and give us a brief presentation.
Chair Gordon, council members, can you hear me okay?
It's pretty good. The sound system here is a little bit strange for...
Do this one? Is that better? Chair Gordon, council members, my name is Patrick Hanlon. I'm the Environmental Initiatives Manager for the City of Minneapolis. Today I'm just talking about our prohibiting installations of perk machines in Minneapolis. It's Chapter 301.105. Just that no new perk machines, new or used, can be installed in any businesses coming into Minneapolis after March 1st, 2016. I'm just going to run through quickly the meaning of the perk ordinance change on the ground. Perk is a chemical, and then David Jones from the Minnesota Department of Health has come to offer the Minnesota Department of Health's perspective on the matter, talk a little bit about air quality concerns with perk, and then outdoor air quality concerns with perk. So the perk ordinance change provides the city with clear authority to prevent new or used machines from being installed in Minneapolis. It's non-controversial. We have spoken with the main stakeholder with this issue, which would be the Minnesota Cleaners Association, and the industry is heading away from perk already. And it's the likelihood of a new perk machine being purchased and installed in Minneapolis is highly unlikely. And so you may ask why make the ordinance change. There's a lot of incentive programs going on in Minneapolis, leading the charge with those incentive programs in the state and in the region. And when those perk machines gets changed out, we want to make sure that they're not coming back into our city, that old pieces of equipment aren't coming back into our city and being installed in other locations. We know that that's happened in other locations. We don't know if, I'm not aware of any in Minneapolis that's the case. But we just want to ensure this gives us an enforcement tool with our staff, with the health department, and then along with business licensing, where we have a clear enforcement tool to say that those machines can't be installed here. So perk, tetrachloroethylene, referred to as perk, is a colorless, non-flammable liquid used mainly for its degreasing properties. It's a volatile organic compound defined as unlikely human carcinogen by the EPA. Long-term exposure is liver damage, kidney damage. Short-term exposure is effects on the nervous system, dizziness, fatigue. It's widely used in dry cleaning, but it's also, you can go to your local auto parts dealer and find a bottle of that contains perk for parts cleaning. And so there's different areas that we're looking at perk and ways to eliminate this chemical in our city, but dry cleaning is the main use of perk in Minneapolis. And so with that, I'm going to have David Jones with the Minnesota Department of Health offer his perspective on, or the Minnesota Department of Health's perspective on PERC.
Good afternoon, Council and Chairman.
Welcome.
So I was just going to make a few points at Patrick's invitation. We have talked about PERC and shared activities related to responding some sites that are in the city that involve PERC contamination. And I think one of the slides coming up is going to give some details on one of those examples. Our risk assessment has derived based on new data from EPA's Integrated Risk Information System, also known as IRIS. In the past couple of years, a reevaluation of the toxicity, the literature on toxicity of perchloroethylene found that lower levels cause effects than were known previously, and as a result, we revised our health-based value, which is now set at 2 micrograms per cubic meter of air. So it's fairly low compared to other things, but it's in line with some of the other chlorinated solvents that have similar mechanisms of action. What this means is we really don't like to see a lot of people exposed to perchloroethylene, is a simple way of putting it. Higher levels than this are found in places where it's used actively, but for the general public, we recommend that levels be kept very low, such as 2 micrograms per cubic meter is a good ballpark or goal that we would set, something that we feel is safe for all people to breathe. A couple other points on PERC. We've seen a lot of sites where this has been used, and eventually it almost always leaks and ends up in the environment. And it's very costly to investigate and clean up any of these chlorinated solvents. So anything that removes them from potential leaking sites is a good thing in our book. And as Patrick mentioned, there are alternatives coming online. They seem to be safer from the point of view of someone handling it. They're less toxic, but I think they also get by with a much smaller volume. So even if they do wind up having releases, it tends to create a lot less problems in the environment.
Thank you very much.
And so, as David was referring to, we worked closely with the Minnesota Department of Health and the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency on a case a couple years ago, U.S. cleaners at Parkway Plaza. And David talked about that 2 micrograms per cubic meter. Well, the workers being exposed at the U.S. dry cleaners were being exposed to 80,000 micrograms per cubic meter. And then we took measurements, and the Department of Health and the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency took measurements and found PERC in an adjoining business in that same shopping center. And so that was a case study. We don't know if that's necessarily different than the 9 other dry cleaners, other than being co-located with a daycare, but the levels that workers are being exposed to, don't know if that's necessarily different than those 9 other locations in Minneapolis. And so as part of this ordinance change today is to make sure we don't have any more of those situations happening in Minneapolis. If we have used equipment coming into the city, chances are that equipment is not as efficient as some of the newer equipment. So that's indoor air quality. Outdoor air quality. The EPA estimates the background levels of PERC to be less than 2 micrograms per cubic meter across the city. And while that may be true in Minneapolis as an average, if you were to take the average air quality, in our Minneapolis air quality study, we found 99 hits of PERC over that 2 microgram per cubic meter. And that was the most hits of any chemical that we had over health risk values in the study that we did. We studied 64 different chemicals. And that was by far the most, almost 3, with maybe the exception of benzene, was almost 3 times as many hits as we had for other chemicals. 28 of these hits were at our dry cleaning location, and prefer not to use the name of that dry cleaner because they volunteered to be part of the study and to help us out with the study, because they wanted to see what the results of the outdoor sampling were as well. So then there again, I don't believe that at the 8 other locations outside of this dry cleaner that the results would be different at those other locations around the city. So, and the hits that we picked up outside that dry cleaner were as high as 1,000 micrograms per cubic meter. And well over that 2 micrograms per cubic meter health risk value. So there's a real concern with PERC in our outdoor air quality, and especially surrounding these dry cleaning facilities. So today's recommended changes, they're not going to get rid of the existing facilities that are here, but they make sure that we don't have any new or used PERC machines that are coming into Minneapolis, and they bring us a little closer to a PERC-free Minneapolis. And that's all I have for right now. Do you have questions?
Thank you very much. I have one question, and it has to do with the date. It looked like your first slide said nothing in March, and I think the ordinance change says December 31st, 2015.
Yes, and I was wondering if we can have that amended
To
March 1st. We haven't had any installed since December, so it's not a, if we have to go forward with that December 31st deadline, that works. But it was just that date is before the ordinance is passed. So
correct. So you want March 2016?
Yes.
Okay. I think we could consider that. I'm not the author of the ordinance, but Councilman Johnson was nodding that that's fine, and the clerk can note that. Are there any other questions, Councilmember Bender?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think this is a great step, and I wondered if you had done much research about what other municipalities or states had done around this issue. I think it's true that California has banned PERC even for existing cleaning operations, although they gave it a very long, even like 25-year phase-in period. Could you talk about that, and if you considered recommending that Minneapolis take an approach that would look, even if it's 25 years in the future at our existing PERC operators?
Yes. California is probably the most aggressive in terms of regulatory standards. By 2023, they want to be a PERC-free state. And they also have incentive programs. They're not as aggressive as the programs that we're doing here in Minneapolis. And I believe out east in Massachusetts, they also have incentive programs for people switching away from PERC. We've, in the spirit of engaging the Cleaners Association and doing this on a voluntary basis and taking a different approach, we have not set a date for a regulatory standard as far as when these machines have to be banned from Minneapolis or out of Minneapolis.
Mr. Chair, I think obviously more outreach would need to be done, I would think, for us to consider that, but I think it's worth asking that question as we move forward, particularly because we have such great incentive programs in place. And as you said, the industry is moving in that direction, so I think it's something to consider in the future.
Mm-hmm. Chair Gordon, Councilmember Bender, there is another part of our pollution control registration fees restructure that's coming before council shortly. Also includes a portion on adding a fee for dry cleaners that use PERC in their operations.
I don't see any other comments up here, so I think you can sit down, but thank you so much for your presentation. If there's more questions later, we can ask you to come back. I do want to open the public hearing now, and we have one person signed up, Joe Peterson. So if you can come up and give us your name and your address if you'd like. And
I'm Joe Peterson, former owner of Prestige Cleaning Center and Uptown Cleaners in Minneapolis. My son Tad is now the owner. Quick history, in 2001, we became the first 100% environmental dry cleaner in the state of Minnesota, eliminating all hazardous waste. And I really am glad to see the wording on this bill. It will not put the existing dry cleaners out of business, but will prevent any more PERC being brought in or converting to different PERC machines. Very good issue. Other things I'd like to see done, but this is a very good start.
Thank you. Thank you. Don't hesitate to share your other ideas in the future, too, and with our staff. I'm sure we'd like to do that. Is there anyone else who'd like to make a comment on this item? And I'm going to close the public hearing, and I'll turn to Councilmember Johnson. Motion or comment?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to move this item forward for approval as amended as well to March 1st as the effective date, and then I'd like to speak on the item.
Go ahead.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to also thank Mr. Jones for being here, Mr. Hanlon for your work on this, and our health department overall for this work. It's clearly an important issue. We've had, in my ward particularly, a daycare with a lot of children who were affected by this, including the workers that were affected by 40,000 times more perk than is a safe level to be exposed to. In fact, I think I'm still probably recovering from getting a face full of perk when we were checking out those machines and moving them out. And so I'm really glad to see this come forward. I'm also very glad and want to recognize Councilmember Fry for his work on increasing the licensing fees around this. I know that this is a big cost for our staff in terms of increased enforcement. I think that that will further incentivize these dry cleaners to switch away from perk once they have to pay ultimately the real cost, which is more, for making sure that these machines are not having unintended consequences to the neighbors. I'm very concerned, of course, over a wide area that we're exceeding the safe levels of perk, and I would actually personally like to be more aggressive on this. As Councilmember Bender noted, I think there's an opportunity here to explore. We can be aggressive enough to do an outright ban and phase this out and work with business owners to really be a perk-free city. I want to encourage the businesses listening to make the switch. I think it's good for your customers, certainly as a dry cleaner patron. I now am very conscious of the choice I make, making sure that my clothes don't have carcinogens all over them as I sit in them for 8 hours a day. And so I would hope that our business owners take advantage of the grants that are available. And overall, I just want to really thank staff for your work on this, for making sure that we're following up with these dry cleaners and keeping the city as healthy as can be. So thank you.
Thank you very much, and I really appreciate you bringing this forward.